The season continues after a showdown in the Lone Star State, and now with a face-off with the Monster. Where tonight, for the virtual Dover International Speedway, we welcome you to KBRN's live coverage of the CRL Cup Series race number 6 of its 2021 season. Happy to have you join us from the Monster Mile, one of the most famed short tracks in all of NASCAR history. And along with me for all the action is Francisco Bacalhau once again after our journey from the Lone Star State just last week. And Francisco, we move to a completely different venue. I mean, we talked about the abrasiveness that was really present at a place like the Old Texas, but this one really brings it to your heels. You have to really work to get a car around here, and for 125 laps, it is going to be a grueling challenge for each and every one of the competitors here tonight.
Stay with you the entire time that you're here racing. I mean, the tire fall off here is insane. I mean, we see these guys sometimes move up the racetrack because they need to find the grip and search around the racetrack, although we won't see much of that here on the iRacing version of Dover. We'll still see them move at least away from the bottom itself, and they'll go about to the middle of the racetrack to try and find that grip. And not to mention that this has probably the most difficult pit road entry that we have on the NASCAR schedule. I mean, we see it so many times. People oftentimes will miss pit road and end up in the attenuator at the entry of pit road, and it really is it's so inviting to go in deep. You feel like you can go in so much faster than what you can, and by the time you realize it's too late, you're in the attenuator.
And Dover's not a very easy place to get around, but just to get a better reference of where we are in the virtual world and more about this Dover International Speedway, we'll take a look at a better reference with our KBRN Track Map with images provided by Google Earth. Step into Dover, Delaware. That's where you'll find this 1 mile venue, and very tough. There it is right there. The 1 mile venue oval, of course, 4 turns, opened way back in the 60s and has played host to a lot of fantastic races in NASCAR history, and of course a lot of different drivers taking the checkered flag, and quite possibly one of the more abrasive tracks. A lot of the banking here, but the banking does give way to what happens out of the corners, and that's also something we'll watch for, Francisco. But going into a race like this, you talked about just how rough it is on pit road entry, but even just racing this venue, you're sticking all the way to the bottom. The banking is kind of rough. You have some of the bumps here, and then you have the exits coming off of the corners where the wall just comes up so quick, and one misstep, one little mistake, even if you're going side by side, could set the whole field into big peril.
Yeah, much like Bristol, this track is completely concrete, except it's a mile in length. So you're driving a mile for a lap, and it's all concrete. So it's different than when you were to race the asphalt, just the adhesive differences, the way the concrete absorbs the heat, the way it actually lays the rubber down on it. It's much different. And if you think about it, you're never truly flat here at Dover unless you're in pit road. You're always banked, whether you're on the straightaways and the turns. Pit road is the only time where you're not going to be facing any sort of banking, and that really does provide some challenges, because just as you mentioned, you could really misjudge the exit of these corners because that banking is still there, and you think you could drift the car a little bit more, but if you do, you end up in the wall.
Certainly will be a challenge, but as the drivers will start to make their way behind the iRacing pace car, it'll be our time to give you your starting grid. See exactly where every driver and your favorite driver will be starting here tonight from the Monster Mile. On the pole here tonight will be race winner a couple of weeks ago, Eric Heater in the 10, tried to go 2 in a row last week, or at least tried to go 3 in a row last week at Texas, did not get it completed, but he's still looking for a 3rd race win in this series. And right alongside him, once again returning to the season, a good show out at the Roval with the number 23 of Michael Rosero.
Looking back at your second row, we have Casey Drake, who had a fantastic comeback after going a lap down late in that race. And then your last week's race winner, Luke Lafaro, starts alongside him in the 4th spot.
Row 3 will feature the 41 of Lucas Strayer with the 57 of Matthew Oliveira starting to his outside. That'll be your 3rd row.
Back to the 4th row, we see Quinn Gingrich in the 42, starting in the 7th spot next to him, Tyler Tomasi.
Behind them, row number 5 to complete this top 10, you'll find the 64 of Brett Murphy still looking for that first win this season, and Josh Redden in the 28 will line up this top 10.
Luke Peters, who had a fantastic final run in that race with the old tires to hang on to the top 5 spot. Will start off in the 11th spot. Next to him, Marshall Harris in the 19.
And behind them, those are the only drivers to complete times. However, drivers behind them include Blady Floyd, who also follows in with Luke Peters as the driver to hold on in the final stages of that Texas race under old tires. The aid of Bryn George is also in here as well, and that will complete your entire field from the Dover International Speedway. So right now they're lined up behind the iRacing official pace truck, and they're still waiting for the go signal from the truck to actually get going before we make our way around. And there goes the truck. So we are now rolling, heading over into what will be the entrance of 1 and 2, and now into 3 and 4 when we get to the back straightaway. But Francisco here, I mean, these Cup cars don't give a lot, really. They aren't necessarily forgiving in a lot of aspects, especially when it comes down to tire wear. And over the course of 125 laps, you saw the strategy play out at places like Texas. And tonight, should we expect a lot of that strategy and the tire wear to really take into effect, or do you think we're probably going to have to watch for a lot of chaos and probably a lot of crashing, maybe some wild things happening here tonight?
Maybe with the car count, we might see some strategy come into effect. I'm not sure exactly what the fuel percentage for tonight is. I believe it is going to be around the 60-65%. I'll get back to you on that. But that does indicate that we could end up seeing some green flag pit stops. And when you pit is going to be important because it sets up your next run, you know, like how old your tires are going to be relative to the field, how much time can you gain on the new tires. But that's going to play out the rest of this race as we see Eric Heater on the pole getting ready to take the green flag. And there they go. He's spinning the tires a little bit, and Rosero able to get it ahead along with Luke Lafaro. Both guys on the top are able to get it onto the bottom.
And a very shaky start for your pole sitter. Eric Heater now falls to 3rd at the entrance of 1 and 2. And now he'll be out of it behind Texas winner Luke Lafaro and Michael Rosero, as they will now file out at a turn 4 complete your first lap out of 125 miles here at the Dover International Speedway. Everybody practically up until I'd say about the top 8 or so, or 7 rather, with Tyler Tomasi, they have completed and broken away from the guys up front. But for now, here's a pass for second. Eric Heater using that leeway to the bottom of Luke Lafaro, and here's Casey Drake also to complete the pass.
Yeah, after a shaky start, the bottom 2 that started on the inside row are starting to find their way back. But look at that lead that Michael Rosero has built up to the cushion on the number 10, who is now into the 2nd spot. So he's got a sizable lead now, so he can really put to use that clean air and try to save some tires here to work himself into a potential long run.
And Michael Rosero, one of those drivers that was very fantastic at the Roval just a couple of weeks ago, made his first start there, and that's really where he shined and where we put all of our attention towards that 23 Ford Mustang. But ever since he made his entrance into the series, he's done fairly well for himself. And tonight, after that initial start, he's taken away the lead, and now he's broken apart from Eric Heater in second by about 7 to 8 tenths. But still rather early here, as talked about Luke Lafaro falling back to 4th. There's the 57 of Matthew Oliveira in a duel with the 41 of Lucas Strayer, both of them fighting for what is now the end of the top 5. But now you see them really going onto the banking. You see how that side-by-side battle really worked. Not necessarily too much action side-by-side, though, but at a track like this, it gets very narrow, Francisco. You're looking at the banking, and you said how it doesn't really end, and that's exactly true, because if you see there, they're still at a little bit of a slant going to the front and back straightaway to the start-finish line. But when you're side-by-side, it gets very tight because you're really trying to put in the throttle. Obviously, you do have to slow down, and you don't have a lot of downforce to couple with that. So you're really just playing with the throttle, trying to get as much as you can, and especially when you're in a head battle with somebody, it can get very tough to hold either line.
You know, you mentioned the low downforce package, and despite the low downforce package, you're carrying a lot of speed through these corners, which goes to show the amount of banking that this racetrack does contain within itself. And of course, the concrete that we talked about that it has a different adhesive characteristics to it relative to the asphalt. But nonetheless, you're able to carry so much speed here, but even with that, that's what causes the tires to wear so much because you're going so much faster. You see right there, that driver lost a little bit of the nose as he got into close to the rear bumper of Blady Floyd. So it's going to be a problem. The dirty air is going to be a problem. When you get really close behind somebody, the car will not want to agree and it will not want to turn, coupled with the fact that the cars tend to get tight in the long run. And if you're running the very bottom, it is going to want to shoot up the racetrack.
There's a pass right there as you're riding on board with Brady Floyd in the rear bumper of his Ford Mustang. Gets around Tyler Tomasi for the 7th spot. You saw him barely get around Brett Murphy at the moment and in that Ford Mustang as well. Brady Floyd, one of those drivers who stayed out on old tires to end the Texas race last week and did a phenomenal job of keeping himself in that fight along with Luke Peters. And we had really were concerned about whether he was going to get swallowed by the field, considering the fact that he was on the oldest tires of the field along with Luke Peters at the time. And it seemed as though he was able to hold on in the final 2 laps, a green-white checkered finish, and did a remarkable job to keep himself in the top 3. So from 13th, Floyd has crept up to 7th, one of the biggest movers here tonight.
And there we see Eric Heater has been slowly chipping away at your race leader. He closed in about a 10th that time. He's slowly starting to catch up to the leader, and it's very methodical. You have to be very patient at this racetrack as we're on board with him, and you can see the kind of inputs he's making. You want to be smooth with the inputs here because that'll treat the tires very nice and it'll keep them cooler than what you normally would have them here if you were to really push the car. And you can see right there, he's just able to roll the car at the bottom just a little bit better, able to chip in about another 1/2 tenth there. So a little bit here, a little bit there, and soon enough he'll end up on the rear bumper of that 23 and really put the pressure on him to try and get past him for the race lead event in a couple laps.
I think, Francisco, if there's one word you can really take over from, I think, the road courses of Charlotte, or at least the road course at the Charlotte Roval, one of the words that can really translate into a track like this is patience. You said methodical movements, methodical ways of passing drivers, getting around drivers, and practically just taking yourself around this racetrack every single time. And it takes a lot of patience really to get around this venue, just because you know how the car is going to feel. The car is not really going to give you a lot, so you really have to baby it practically off of the banking, get as much as you can. And as you're riding on board with Eric Heater, I think that's where you can see it the most on how he's really treating the car as smoothly as possible. You don't see any jagged movements, you don't see any sawing of the wheel, you just see smooth inputs, basically just babying it all the way around the 1 mile venue. So Eric Heater using that strategy to his benefit, because he has crept up about 0.3 of a second ever since we last talked about the gap. So 0.4 now between the 10 of Eric Heater and Michael Rosero, and Eric Heater being one of the 2 drivers currently sitting with wins in the CRL Cup Series season, riding in the top 5. The other was Luke Lafar. Francisco, phenomenal way to end Texas, and capping it off the Lone Star State with a wild finish, green, white, checkered, and Luke Lafaro on the freshest tires, able to capture that win, and finally has that chip off his shoulder as he's currently riding 4th.
Yeah, he made that final lap pass on the 20 of Brady Floyd. We saw that. It was a fantastic finish to that one. He was able to make the pass in 3 and 4, coming to the checkered flag to pick up that win, and he was in a battle also with Casey Drake, who made the late move for 2nd. And you know, of course, Texas, very different racetrack to Dover, even if it's the old Texas. Just the way you drive the 2 racetracks is completely different. You're talking about 1.5 miles, and then you're also talking about a 1 mile racetrack. And though the banking is oddly similar in the corners, they both have 24 degrees. As previously mentioned, you have concrete here and you have asphalt at Texas, and this is 1 mile in length, and you also have banking on the straightaways. There's just so much different between the 2 racetracks, but it's easy to compare because of the amount of fall off and the way you have to treat the car. That's where the similarities lie. And as you're seeing right now, some of the same guys who are running up front in that Texas race find themselves up front here. It's kind of like what you said there at the end. It's kind of the same, but it's an entirely different animal, and you have to treat it differently. But you can draw many similarities, especially behind the wheel. But the biggest difference, obviously, that we have from here than what we have at Bristol is at least here on the iRacing service, you're not going to find many cars running up against the wall. We've seen many times, many instances in real life where they'll get real close to that wall. We've seen it many times in that infamous uh, race in 2017 where Kyle Busch ran down Chase Elliott. He was up close to that wall, making good lap time. Unfortunately, we don't have that here quite yet. I'm hopeful that in the future we'll be able to see cars be able to go all the way up there as we've seen in the past. But regardless of that, we're able to see some of these guys move from the bottom of the racetrack to the middle of the racetrack, and just trying to move up is one of those similar characteristics that we'll find. You see, at this point in the run, nobody really wants to be around that bottom. You see Eric Keeter kind of around the middle bottom, as we actually see he's going to miss pit road. Casey Drake misses pit road. I was just about to get ready to mention the pit road strategy. It looks as though the fuel window is about 65 laps, so I'm not sure what happened there, but he definitely missed pit road and was trying to come in. So I'm wondering what the strategy behind this would be, because if the fuel window, by my calculations, being a 75% fill, it should mean that these drivers should be able to go about 65 laps before they come down pit road. So them coming in on lap 27 is really interesting. And if, say, they're able to go another 65 laps, like I previously mentioned, that's about lap 90. So I'm just wondering if they're trying to get that longest portion of the run out of the way now in the middle of the race and have those fresh tires at the end. It's very interesting, and I'm not quite sure where this will lead to, but that's why we're here commentating this race and bringing it to everybody to see what happens along with you. Hey, Kenneth. He's closed in about 2/10, and if you noticed on the right rear of your race leader, Michael Rosero, he has a little bit of damage on that right rear. I was noticing that as you were mentioning the NASCAR Geek, and there's a little bit of damage on his right rear, and Eric Heater's been able to close the gap, so that's an interesting note to make there. See right there in the center of the corner, he just had a little bit more grip. Rosero a little bit loose off turn 2, so he's feeling that pressure right now. Eric Heater trying to find a different line to run to be able to set up a pass. You see he backed up his entry a little bit, and right there, that's where he's starting to gain that time. He clips the apron just a tad, and you don't want to really do that too much as he's going to lose that time he gained. But that's the struggle of being right behind the leader. It's the dirty air, trying to find a different line to run to be able to set up for a pass. And this is the toughest part that he's going to face, because if you're half a second back and you're able to find a way to close up to the leader, that's one thing. But trying to get around him and at least get side by side with him is probably the most difficult thing you can do.
Again, referring back to what you said about methodical passes, methodical movements, methodical everything, and trying to be as precise as possible here at Dover. That's exactly what Heater is aiming to do right now. So on an update, we've had one more driver go down pit road, and that was the 41 of Lucas Strayer. So over the course of our early stint, we've had 4 drivers now edge down pit road, with Lucas being really the only one to go down by himself, as the other 3 kind of went down around the same sort of lap increment. So we're seeing drivers kick off an early strategy here, Francisco, and I'm not sure whether these are specific strategy calls to maybe split the race in sort of segments, but with the way that we have car counts at the moment, do you expect drivers to make these moves with knowing that risk, and whether it'll change but as we continue to move forward?
You know what I'm thinking now, looking at the lap count and based on the fuel mileage, I think the rest of these leaders are going to try and split the race in one stop. But I think these people that are trying a 2-stop race are trying to use fresh tires to make up for that. Sort of like what we were sort of expecting at Texas with that early caution, where we saw Casey Drake trying a 2-stopper versus everybody else trying 1-stop, and a caution came out at the wrong time for him, and it caught him out a lap down. So a similar strategy sort of being employed here, except it's less of an even break. So it's interesting to see how this will unfold, as we're not even a third of the way in.
We'll take a look at a replay. Apparently, word from the officials, it might have been Lucas Strayer that he aimed to go down pit road, but actually spun it, as you see him there just a little bit. And then here, I believe, is where he makes his pit stop. You see him very loose on the track by himself. And then right about here, gets it down to the apron. And this was very close to some of the other drivers around on the track. Could have been the result of our first yellow flag. You see him very slow here. This was about lap number 33 when it did happen. And I believe here just slowing down and practically almost spun the race car. So I believe that was registered as him going down pit road. You see him still now struggling with his race car. He is not having fun. He's really the only one sawing the wheel here, Francisco, as it seemed as though Eric Heater, while we were looking at that replay, has taken over the race lead, and now he is trying to pull away from the 23 of Rosero.
Yeah, lap traffic in the way, but we do have a change in the lead. And it happened not too many laps ago. It happened while we were looking away at that battle, and by the appearance of it, we have actually a car sideways. Big wreck happening on the front straightaway.
Rosero's involved. That was a lap car that got in the way of that, and this brings our first caution flag of the evening. And there were 2 different incidents right at the cause of that yellow. It was the 41 of Lucas Strayer and the 23 of Michael Rosero, who I believe got into one of the other drivers. I'm not sure exactly. That's the 42 of Quinn Gingrich that got involved. And now he has significant damage to his Chevrolet Camaro. We'll take a look at the replay. This is not that long ago, I believe. Gingrich was on some of the fresher tires. Actually, no, around the same level. He was about to go a lap down. Here, you see him there around the 10 of Eric Heater. There's the 23 of Rosero. And then right about here, I think Rosero might have gone off the racetrack and then gets into the 42. And that's exactly where the mayhem ensues.
Yeah, unfortunate sequence of events there. He had lost the lead about 2 laps prior to this happening, and it happened when he got the wall off turn number 4. So he was not having a very good time in the race car, and he popped the wall off turn 4, allowed Eric Heater to get side by side and cleared him into 3. And then 2 laps later, just an unfortunate situation while trying to get around a lap car. I'm not sure if he misjudged the amount of room he had. You see right there, actually got a little bit loose and tried to correct it. And at the same time, you see a car having trouble up in front, but at the end of the day, Rosero in the 23 is the reason for why we have our first caution of the race. And that's going to trap guys like Casey Drake a lap down. I believe, though, he is the free pass car this time, so his strategy is not entirely out of the system.
So right now, everybody goes down pit road apart from Matthew Oliveira. He's the only one to stay out and the only one that has not gone down to pit road for service. But meanwhile, everybody else is down. There's Eric Heater, Michael Rosero burning up that fast pair, Luke Lafaro, Tyler Tomasi out, and some of the 4 cars that exit out of pit road, and they will be the next cars on lead lap, as there is the pace car collecting most of the lapped machines. So now this really throws a wrench into everything, and we were talking about strategy. Some drivers had gone down pit road. And now this could be their opportunity, since they are a couple laps down, to aim and get some wave rounds if they see fit. But if you do see what happened to Michael Rosero's race car, went from a beat-up Ford Mustang to a brand new car, and that is because we do have fast repairs available for these drivers. It was at least one given to every single driver at the start of each race. So when you do get some damage, you can check that box down pit road, get a fast repair, get a completely fresh race car, and be on your way out. But the problem that goes with that is, if you do get damage early, burn up a fast repair, you will still have to deal with the consequences of damage if you get it after you burn the fast repair, and you won't have any more options to get a completely fresh race car. So we'll see how Rosero handles this car, considering the fact that we're still very early in this race, pretty much less than halfway, about, I'd say 26 laps away from our halfway point. But
About a third.
Yeah, about a third of where we're going from our halfway point. So it's still relatively early and may pose some trouble there. May have to amp up the patience level for Rosero on this front.
See the lights back on the pace truck, meaning they'll go another time around. I believe they were off for a good portion there, but regardless of that, an interesting point there about the fast repair. Yeah, everybody does have a fast repair, but the main thing you want to do is uncheck it for your regular pit stops. It's very easy, at least for me, at least early on it was very easy for me to forget to uncheck it. I don't have any damage on my race car, but it still will use the fast repair, or better yet, you have 1 second of optional and it'll use the fast repair without you realizing it. So in most of these pit stops, these guys have to uncheck it. That way they don't use up the fast repair in a useless instance, rather.
And that's probably the worst part about it. I think as sim racers, if you even have the slightest bit of damage, and even if you can practically spend maybe 5 to 10 seconds down pit road, it is a lot of time that's wasted, considering that you have the competition going against you. You don't want to lose the track position down pit road. However, if it's like 5 to 10 seconds of damage, you don't have to burn the fast repair, and you can just take some of that time, burn it then, and then get your car all repaired instead of having to use that fast repair. I think that's the worst part about it. If you don't make sure to check it, or uncheck it rather, then the car will just use the fast repair even if you don't really want it to, and that's probably the worst part about it, because then you don't have really a fast repair at all if you get into any sort of incidents throughout this race. Saw a choose cone rule, so that means that Eric Heater, which was the outside on this restart, which is very curious to see considering the fact that he's been rocking the bottom all night long. Brady Floyd using the inside will start on the bottom side of row number 1, along with Michael Rosero and Luke Lofaro also as well on the outside. So the 16 of Luke Peters will also look low, but he is 1 lap down. Pace truck will make its way down to pit road for the first time. Apart from our initial start, Eric Heater will be on his way, and we're on a restart on lap number 46 from the Dover International Speedway.
Correction, they were actually single file for the lead lap drivers, and the lap cars were to the inside. You know, a little bit of classic restart there from 2009 and previous.
Well, Brady Floyd was on the lead lap, so he currently fights with Tyler Tomasi. They have used this choose cone rule before, and now he is to the bottom of that Toyota Camry, making that move. One of the colorful schemes on the top side of a Love is Love, a scheme that we've seen for a couple of weeks now in this series. Good to see him now back on the racetrack. He'll defend for the moment, and now it's basically the duel again. Francisco, the top two, and we've been talking about them all night, the most consistent drivers, but look no further than third, where Luke Lofaro kind of sits. He's been running around here for most of the early stint, and although the top two have been the talk of the town, that 54 has been stealthily putting up a good run.
Yeah, he's been quietly in this top 3, and it goes without mentioning. And, you know, we saw him running up front at Texas, kind of in the same position he was in now, and it was until late in the race where he really struck. So, again, don't count out that 54. We still got a long ways to go, and he's very much in the same position he was a week ago, where we saw him out of nowhere really take that win. And again, more or less, the same drivers we saw up front at Texas we're seeing up front here, and that's usually how these leagues go. But seeing as such difficult racetracks as they are, it really goes to show the kind of talent it takes to be good at these kinds of racetracks, where it really requires a lot of the driver. And 2 different packages, not to mention.
Yeah, nobody really eyes the amount of time that drivers do put into this sim. And now we have another yellow on lap number 49, and it does involve I believe, it may have been Luke Peters, who was very slow on the track. You saw him battling with some lead lap cars. He's currently a driver in 13th, 1 lap down, but I believe he was battling with the likes of Brady Floyd, Matthew Oliveira, and Tyler Tomasi, but he was very slow on the track, so I believe he was the cause of our second incident. We'll take a look and see exactly where this started. You'll see right about here the 42 of Quinn Gingrich. There's a 16, gets into the outside wall, tries to chase the car back down, and is in a half spin. He's able to save it, but iRacing constitutes that as a yellow, even though he did manage to gather the car back up.
Yeah, it was a good save by him. It's not easy to save race cars at Dover, especially with the banking everywhere. I mean, how many instances have we rarely seen where you see how much wheel he was putting up into it? That's probably actually going to hurt it in that case, but he can't do anything else. I mean, he's able to keep it off both walls. Again, very difficult to do. We don't see that happening very often here. How many times have we seen it? You can kind of with your hands practically. Jimmy Johnson in qualifying here,
yes.
AJ Allmendinger not too many years ago in this very same turn. So it's incredibly difficult. So for somebody to be able to hang on to that, you have to give him credit.
Yeah, especially how close he got to the inside wall there entering turn 3. That could have been even worse if he striked it, because then his car would have practically been spiraling back up the track and would have been probably even worse for anyone who was behind him, including Josh Redden, Lucas Strayer, to get around. But luckily for Peters, everybody will be gathered up, and Peters will still be one lap down, not in the lucky dog position, I don't believe just yet, as there's Casey Drake now out of pit road. He's one of the only drivers to get service on this yellow flag. And Heater and everybody else will practically stay out. So again, we lay under rest behind the iRacing official pace truck for the second time on our second yellow of the evening. But I think referring to what you said, Francisco, about the same sort of drivers, and at least what I was about to expand on in terms of the way the practice goes and the way these drivers put time into the sim. And in some leagues, there obviously comes seriousness in with some of the drivers. Maybe they don't put as much practice into some leagues as they do with others. Maybe they take leagues differently depending on what they are. Some of them are more serious than others. However, that does not go to show that these drivers don't put hours into this sim itself. I mean, iRacing goes to these venues in their official series. They go in bigger events to some of these NASCAR tracks. I mean, mention the NIS Daytona 500. There's a lot of drivers who run that. Maybe even events like the Podium 500, the Firecracker 400. Events where drivers can really show their skills, drivers where they can go on these kind of races and put a lot of hours into where their setups are or where they really want to be and how they want to put their cars in. I think NIS is probably the best example since it follows through the NASCAR schedule and it's basically 50% races, so you kind of have to put your mindset into performing very well over the course of that entire endurance. And, you know, guys like Eric Heater, 2 race wins this season at Michigan and the Charlotte Roval, has done a phenomenal job of keeping himself consistent. Guys like Michael Rosero joining the league, Luke LaFaro. A lot of these guys have put a good amount of hours into the sim, and it's practically paying off in this sort of competition where they're practically very good within each other.
Yeah, you mentioned the practice it takes to be able to run good, and in other leagues as well. I mean, a couple of weeks ago in the Bunge Lawn Care Series at Homestead, I put in so much time at Homestead when the official series went there. I mean, I think you saw just how much time I was putting in. I was very serious about getting better at that racetrack. It's a racetrack I pride myself in being good in. You know, I have to represent my hometown. I like defending home turf, so I really feel I have to do that to myself to get better there and then expand beyond that point. And I know that there's drivers out here that maybe don't take it to that point, but I know that there's some that do. There's some that do want to be good, at least on their home track. Maybe there's a racetrack they like in particular that they take pride in being good at. And we never know whose racetrack is what. That's what's so interesting. Maybe one driver is so similar to another, yet they like completely opposite racetracks in terms of how you're supposed to drive them. And that's why every driver is different and every race is different, and why we tune in to watch, because you just never know in different circumstances. And that's why the official series helps these guys get better at every racetrack, and you're able to see who's able to attack each racetrack in a different manner.
Well, they will attack the green flag this time by Eric Heater and Brady Floyd back to the front row. We'll see how early Eric Heater jumps it. He'll do it at the exit of turn 4, and we are back under green flag conditions, and there's 3 wide about behind them. Casey Drake tried to split the bottom from Lucas Strayer and Tyler Tomasi, but in terms of the race lead, Eric Heater will spread away from Michael Rosero once again. While the battle for what will be the 4th spot, or 3rd rather, will continue to heat up. Here's Brady Floyd picking his nose to the inside. Not enough this time.
Remember that Casey Drake has about 10 lap newer tires, and that could make a difference, especially in the long run. So we'll have to keep an eye on that 87 as the laps continue to click. The only thing is he's stuck a little bit in traffic, and it's going to be hard to pass. But there we see Brady Floyd who was in a little bit of a tire disadvantage there for a couple laps, but he's able to hold strong there in that 4th spot, much like we saw about a week ago. And there goes Casey Drake to the inside of that 57. And it's so tough to make a pass on the inside here, Kenneth, especially when you're in the position like the 87 was. When you're on corner exit, trying to get the power down, that car on the outside is really pinching you down there, and it's just impossible. And it feels like the corner is so much longer than what it should because you're unable to get on the throttle.
And you see him there now trying to hop to the low side. You see him there now making in effect to Matthew Oliveira, trying to make that pass happen. He is on the freshest tires, but it seems to be more patient-filled here instead of just blowing by the competition, as third might be under fire. Saw Brady Floyd try to catch up to the 54 of LaFaro, try to make the pass, did not complete it. However, they are still within each other's striking distance. So for the moment, as Brady Floyd actually will hop loose out of turn 4, had to catch the race car, clip the apron a little bit there off the exit of the corner. It seems as though he's okay. The tires will be shot just a little bit, and he will lose that spot to Todd Tomasi, and effectively the battle between him and LaFaro is over, at least for this point.
Yeah, a good save, though. He was able to recover from that. And there we see the 87 of Casey Drake ready to pounce, trying to get past these guys with those fresher tires, and he wants to waste no time doing so. Get that track position that he had lost under that caution from being stuck a lap down. He's got 2 cars right in front of him, so they're going to be using different lanes because of the 20 wanting to pass the 76. So he's going to be in a tough spot for right now, but if he can sort of get them single file so that they can settle this battle out, he'll be in a good spot. But you can see right there, looking to go 3 wide, but Brady's able to shut off that 76 from making an attack on the outside, and that'll give the 87 the bottom and maybe set himself up for 3 and 4. Actually, Brady Floyd gets a little bit tight off turn number 2, and that allows the 87 to get ahead of these guys. So we see 4 cars under a blanket here for the 5th spot.
They continue to make their way through. That is Tomasi with Lucas Strayer and Matthew Oliveira. Strayer almost had a piece there as Floyd got in the wall. Strayer trying to make things stick and basically thread the needle right there as he almost got into the 20 of Floyd, and even then, Floyd is still struggling with the handling of that race car ever since that initial incident getting loose off the exit of turn 4. It has not been nice to him. It's gone all downhill, and hopefully at this point he's able to keep it back up, but that could have been very large between the guys 5th on back. Top 3 though have spread themselves away. It's about 0.8 of a second as now we work towards our halfway mark of tonight's race. Eric Heater continues to lead the way.
They pitted about 20 laps ago, maybe about 18 to 20 laps ago. We had 1 caution. So if this race goes green to the end, we'll still have 1 pit stop to go for sure, which is probably what that 87 was thinking with that pit stop there under that caution. They have 4 tire sets, and assuming that they only have to pit 1 more time, they'll still have an extra set available, at least for him, even though he's used 1 more than the rest of the field. But that puts him off strategy and gives him something different to do. You see right there, he's all over the back now of Luke LaFaro for the 3rd spot, and he has these better tires. So he's hoping for a long run so that he can use this to a part of his strategy. Maybe pit a little bit later, do a different strategy. You never know. But pitting there opened the door up for him, which is all he wants. And as you can see, he gets loose off turn number 2, trying to get to the inside of the 54, but he should be able to get the spot right here with the 54 way up the racetrack.
Yeah, 54 of LaFaro all the way up, scrubbing the outside wall barely into the marbles, but he will lose that spot and give way to Casey Drake, who will now start to look away. But I think that's where things will go key. It all depends, though, if we stay green, because if we do get a yellow from here on out, which we may have one come fairly within the rest of this stint, maybe we could go green all the way through, but say that we do get a yellow flag, it'll practically change everything, because Casey Drake can go down pit road with the leaders, and he will be on equal footing, and it probably won't be as big of a difference. It just depends on whether things stay green. That's where the plan gets executed, because then he has the oldest tires after a while, but the leaders have even worse tires, and then they go down pit road, they have fresh rubber, but Drake is able to stay out, give some time, and then basically keep the distance and possibly stay in the race seat, then go down pit road and be the freshest tires of the field, and then from then he can again chop his way up through position like he is doing right now. So it basically depends on whether the stint continues, but fresh tires are working to his benefit, about 8 laps fresher, and he is starting to reel down the 23 of Michael Rosero.
The best comparison I can draw to this is when we saw Omar Diallo in the Bunge Lawn Care Series race. He did this exact same strategy. He pitted on the second caution of the 2, and he was able to use fresher tires to really get through the entire field, and that's what set him up perfectly for the rest of that race. And right here, we're seeing Casey Drake employ the exact same thing. Still, the only difference is here we have tire set limits. They have 4 sets of tires, and Casey's already used 2, while the rest of these leaders have used 1. So if we get a rash of cautions, that really is not going to help the 87. But if it goes green, it plays right into his hands, given the strategy he's employing here tonight. And we can see he's making good use of it. He's able to cut into the gap to second place, and once he's able to get by that 23, it's going to be all sights on the leader.
There's Tyler Tomasi, an overhead shot with Lucas Strayer, then leads the group Matthew Oliveira with Brady Floyd, who's fallen through to 8th, Bryn George, who may be looking for position along with Josh Redden. We only have one driver under the lead lap, and that is Luke Peters, so should we get a yellow flag here, Peters will be the next one to be on the lead lap, but he has significant damage to the front end of his Ford Mustang. Then follows Brent Murphy, who's way behind the race leaders. Has not been a good race for the driver who dominated a segment of the opening race at Daytona. He is now at basically risk of being put 1 lap down, as you'll follow through with the rest of the guys up here in this semi-long line of cars. Basically one of the only close battles on the racetrack, as Casey will begin to reel the top 2 down, but we're starting to edge into maybe another green flag stint. About 28 laps now from the leaders, 20 for Casey Drake off of pit road, and maybe now it's basically about staying consistent, staying smooth, and doing whatever you can to keep the car straight.
I think we've reached a point of the run where we can go through the field.
We certainly can. So we'll start with the driver up front, of the driver who has led the most laps from the pole. That is the 10 of Eric Heater, the winner at both Michigan and the Charlotte Roval. Tried going for a three-peat at Texas not so long ago, just a week back, but was not able to capture the win. Still good finishes, and those wins along with him have pushed him into quite possibly the best spot of anybody else in this field. Started from the pole, lost the lead to open this race, but since has taken it back and has led 34 laps to lap number 73. So set sails right to the front is Eric Heater, trying to look for that 3rd win.
Alongside him is the guy who started alongside him, the number 23 of Michael Rosero, who took the lead on the initial start after a little bit of wheel spin from the inside row. He led the early couple laps, got into the wall, lost the lead, and was involved in an incident, used the fast repair, kept his 2nd place spot, and you can see he's been able to put good use of that fast repair and saving that time. He's still running in the 2nd spot. He has a hungry Casey Drake behind him, but watch out for the 23 of Michael Rosero. He's been actually closing the gap to your race leader the last few laps, so he has not let him get away. So keep an eye out for this 23 for the rest of this race.
+8 on fresh tires is the 87 of Casey Drake, who did the same strategy at Texas last week to end the event, and he practically just got to the top 5 and could have won that race if he had a little bit more time. But Drake still looking for that 1st win. Started in his first start in this series a couple of weeks back. I believe Michigan was one of his first sightings in this series in 2021. So seeing him back continuing this season, now riding with Aflac on his Toyota Camry, and he's done a well job of keeping top 5s, top 10s together and trying to build up points along the way. That seems to be the motto here for the 87. And now he is about to get by Michael Rosero, just still a couple of tenths in front of him. And nonetheless, he has been hungry, and maybe we'll see exactly how this strategy plays out.
Looking back at the 4th spot, last week's winner, Luke Lafaro, who's been running in this top 3, top 4 position for most of this race, very quietly, I might add. It's been a very silent night from the 54, nothing flashy, but he's holding position, and he's doing exactly what he has to do to gain some good points. We are 1 race away after today from the playoffs beginning, with the regular season closing next week at the Legacy Pocono Raceway. So the 54 doing exactly what he has to, has a win in the bank, so he's just going out there and trying to have a solid run and maybe can look to have some strategy employed at the end of the race to go for the win.
Bad luck has been some of the motto for the 41 of Lucas Strayer. Hasn't necessarily been the best of races the past couple of times out here when they dropped the green flag at some of the tracks we've been to. But Lucas Strayer trying to get back on the flip side and get things rolling. Got into an incident on the front straightaway where Michael Rosero and the 42 of Quinn Gingrich got into an incident, but he was the only one pretty much to smack the wall. He didn't necessarily go around, but he did have some handling issues with that Chevrolet Camaro. But ever since, he has been good on tracks. But we have a yellow flag as soon as I say that. It'll be our next caution of the evening, and it will involve, I'm not exactly sure who it does involve. You see Quinn Gingrich, who's very slow, or at least stopped now on pit road. We'll see if he was the cause of the incident, but I don't see anybody else that was involved outside of anyone in the in the field so far. So we'll try and find out where this began, but maybe keep our eyes on what that 42 had with him in store. But we'll try to see exactly what happened. He was stopped down pit road the entire time, so I'm not sure whether exactly it was him that got into an incident or practically it may be Luke Peters again, who had a very damaged Ford Mustang, and you see him there off the track, and don't necessarily see anything else from here, but don't see any cause of the yellow, and I think it might have involved here. Word from the officials. There it is. Incident between Brady Floyd and Brett Murphy.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. I was looking at the replays to see what was going on, and an interesting situation there going into turn number 1. We had a car slow on the apron. Looks like he tried to stay on the bottom, and he hit the apron and right up into the path of Brady Floyd. So unfortunate circumstances there for the 20.
You'll see it there as Murphy was working the low side. He was slowing down here, so I'm not sure whether the car just upset itself or what, but I mean, tags the apron, just goes straight up the racetrack, and then from then on, I mean, Floyd has nowhere to go. He's basically just holding on to what he can, gets right into the 20. There he goes hard into the outside barrier, and then they go spinning for our next yellow. So I guess they will go down pit road for now, and they will be on their way. I think there's Brett Murphy right there coming. He'll stay out behind the pace truck, and that'll leave everybody else in. So Eric Heater will be the winner off pit road with Michael Rozzero, Casey Drake, Luke LaFaro, and Lucas Strayer, your top 5. So exactly what I said there, Francisco. Casey Drake on the opposite strategy, but as soon as the caution comes out, he has that opportunity to be right on equal footing, so he doesn't necessarily lose as much.
The one thing that I will mention is that he does have only 1 tire set remaining. Everybody has 4, and he's used an extra one relative to the field. He has only 1 left, so he needs this caution timing to work out in his favor for him not to be forced to stay out late on old tires. So with 43 laps to go, 44 laps to go, give or take, if a caution comes out about 20 or 30 laps from now, then I think he'll be fine. But look out for that 87 just in case he's in a little bit of a tire gimmick right now.
He may be at a situation here, so we'll keep an eye on what that 87 does and how he'll be able to handle that final stretch. It's about 43 laps to the end of this one. Our telemetry does say that if we go green from here on out, we'll probably have about 17 more minutes of racing before we conclude our event and go straight for Pocono for race number 7. But we are already in our halfway mark, and we're practically getting close to the playoffs, and we're practically almost there. I mean, there's about 1 more race at Pocono, and then the playoffs will begin. So we're still at a place where people who do want to get into the playoffs, people who do want to compete for a title, they have to start rushing now if they're in a dire situation. Probably not people like LaFaro or Eric Heater, considering they've done fairly well for themselves, but for others, they may have to start watching what they can do. And should we expect, Francisco, some opposite strategies, or do you think we're probably going to head our 40 laps and it's basically just going to be survival of the fittest up top?
Given the fact that they won't have to pit under green anymore, I think we'll be seeing just flat-out racing from here on to the end, because if you think about it, what difference is it going to make? You're not going to pit under green flag, so the only time you're going to come down pit road again is if there's a caution. You don't want to have a tire disadvantage, so you'll pit. And, of course, everybody not wanting a tire disadvantage will come down pit road given you have multiple tire sets, especially depending on the amount of laps you run. I would not surprise me if somebody stayed out like we saw Brady Floyd do a week ago. The only thing is I'm not so sure that'll work this time, given the package, given the nature of the Dover racetrack. You'll definitely lose the lead about half a lap through the initial lap of the restart. So not the ideal strategy, but given that everybody else has 2 tire sets left and the 87 only has 1 left, at least everybody has some tires remaining for at least 1 more set of pit stops, which if we get a late caution, everybody will come down pit road.
We may see that. Again, Eric Heater chooses the outside on row 1. Casey Drake to the bottom. He'll use the choose cone rule to be down there. Everybody here practically on fresh tires, and we're on equal footing for the final 42 laps of this race. Back under green off turn 4. A big jump by Eric Heater, but an even bigger jump by Michael Rozzero off of the banking. Gets to the inside of Casey Drake for second. And there's Luke LaFaro to pounce also as well. They're almost 3 wide, though, between the 41, 57, and 76. But they continue to maintain straight. Here's Casey Drake now with the retaliation. Almost dug his nose in. The top 3 now have been at a breakaway.
And that's why Michael Rosero chose to stop. He saw the run off the banking. He was able to get and make the move on the 87, though he has a problem off turn 4. So move the 87 up to second. Luke LaFaro all over the back now of the 23, trying to see if he can attack. But now Casey Drake able to clear for that second spot and try and set sights for your race leader. But we saw what Eric Heater did on that restart there. He moves gradually all the way close to the wall, and then he accelerated. That really helps the leader because it gives yourself such an advantage when you put the throttle down and the people and the drivers on the inside are not really expecting it, and being so close to not only the driver but the wall, it just creates a sense of discomfort, as we see actually the 41 get the wall there and then making a block on the 76. But it creates such a discomfort for the car on the inside, and given that you're trying to turn away from the outside. Oh, as the actually Michael Rosero around from third place.
Michael Rosero again in another incident. Watch out, everybody, up to the outside wall. And again, we remain under the yellow flag. And again, it involves a top contender in Michael Rosero. No faster pairs left. And he got turned by the 54 of Luke LaFaro coming to the front straightaway. And we'll take a look exactly how that formed. And you saw it barely there as we were getting to the action. And saw the 54. It looked like he was going to dive his nose in. It looked like he was going to make the pass here within the next couple laps. Here's a tag from the apron, and then, oh, just a hit to the outside wall, and then gets tagged.
Yeah, he hit the apron, and when you hit the apron on corner exit, you're basically kissing your exit goodbye. And he tried to stay on the throttle as much as he could to hold position, but you saw, got the wall, and the 54 really had nowhere to go. He couldn't do anything. He wasn't expecting the 23 to have that happen to him. He's trying to race for position. It is under 40 laps to go, so he's not going to necessarily both anticipate that and lift. He doesn't think that situation is going to happen right in front of him, but it happened nonetheless. And unfortunately, a little bit of damage to the front of that 54. We actually see him coming down pit road as well. Casey Drake actually coming down pit road potentially to use his final set of tires, so that's going to be something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, everybody else from about, I believe, second on back have decided to go down pit road for a good chunk of drivers. That does obviously include Rosero, Luke Peters, Josh Redden. They have gone down pit road as well, as Casey Drake will be down for what may be the final time tonight. LaFaro could use the faster pair now, but I'm not sure whether he will. And it seems as though he does not have it checked, so he does not get his race car repaired. Rosero will have to spend extra time, though, on pit road to get everything fixed. There's Luke LaFaro with the jack back up. It seems as though he re-enters pit road, and this is very lengthy for the 54. But this will be even very different here, Francisco, because a handful of drivers wanted to stay out here. Eric Heater, only 8 laps, along with Matthew Oliveira, Tyler Tomasi, Brady Floyd, Bryn George, Luke Peters, and Lucas Strayer. So all of them on some semi-older tires, while everybody else will be on the fresh set. But still, I mean, we're still under now 40 laps away from the end of this race. And we do have a word from the officials that Rosero did receive an EOL for that incident.
Yeah, I just want to point out that Rosero did use his fast repair earlier in the race. If you remember from that incident he had on the front straightaway with one of the lap cars he was trying to get by. So using that fast repair early, as you were talking about, he's unable to use it right now at this portion of the race, and we can see just the effects it's having on him. But you mentioned some of these guys coming down pit road, others not. I believe the first car on tires is going to restart in the 6th position, being Casey Draker is down in 7th, excuse me. It'll change as they come across the line, but it'll be around that area. And when you couple that with the choose cone, the choose rule that they'll use here, it could really work in a better favor for Casey Drake now if this goes green, and if he's able to get by some of these other guys rather quickly, given the tire advantage that he has. We saw he was able to get all the way up to all over the back bumper of the 2nd place spot, which was held by Michael Rosero. Given the fact that Michael Rosero is not there now and that he's behind him with damage, it could make the 87's life a little bit easier in this run if it's able to go long enough.
That may be it. So everyone goes out of pit road. Lucas Strayer leads the group off with Drake LaFaro, who I believe does not get his fast repair. He still has a crinkle there on the right front, so he did not decide to burn it off. Luke Peters behind him, Brett Murphy, Josh Redden. Michael Rosero has elected to go to the garage, so he is out of this race. A very unfortunate scenario for one of the toughest drivers to compete with all night long. And Quinn Gingrich, Marshall Harris, also the other drivers that are out of the track. Marshall Harris did not reach to the green flag, and Quinn Gingrich was the only one that was also on the race with Rosero. He's 20 laps down apparently had a hit with the pit wall. So I guess maybe you're talking about the pit attenuator, and it getting hit was true when it came to Gingrich's case, as the officials told us. But we are doubled up, ready to go back green flag racing. Everybody mostly single file up top. Brady Floyd will elect the bottom once more with Lucas Strayer as well. A lot of the drivers who did go down pit road are following that inside groove, so we may watch for them when we go back green. Expecting to see Eric Heater get back on the gas very early, which has been a result of just magnificent runs to turn 1 to the drop of the green flag. He's been able to clear himself easily and not have anybody contending even with him. So we'll see exactly what Heater does, whether he goes up the racetrack, whether he decides to go a little bit later or earlier, up to his discretion. He is the control car. So the pace truck will make its way down pit road. Will be on a restart on lap 92. But still a good amount to go here from Dover International Speedway. Back up the gears, and back we go as they get back to turn 1.
And once again, Eric Heater doing a great job on these restarts to really build himself a lead by the time he gets to turn 1. You see right there a big pack trying to battle for that second spot. Casey Drake right behind it, trying to see how he can get past these guys rather quickly so he can set his eyes on the race lead. But he's got to get past these 4 cars that are in front of him rather quickly before he can think about running down the leader. And there you see a little bit loose to 76 that Casey Drake has to back off a little bit to keep himself from making any contact with them. So it's going to take a lot of patience out of that 87. We see him actually miss the bottom there on corner exit. That's not going to help his case, especially with the 54 looking to attack. So it's going to require some patience out of this 87, but with less laps remaining in this race, it's going to be increasingly difficult.
Here's Matthew Oliveira now negative, or now -2, and maybe even -3 in positions from the green flag, as there's Brady Floyd now to the inside. Lucas Strayer and Tyler Tomasi also find their way in, and now he'll try to defend and make a move back under, and Casey Drake using that outside, maybe the middle with Luke LaFaro as they remain side by side. But up to Eric Heater, it's now almost a second as we complete lap 94 to lap 95, getting about the last 30 laps of this race. And the laps do wind down here quickly at Dover as Casey Drake has just struck the outside wall. Did he get into an incident? He actually just quit, so he is now out of the racetrack. And it seems as though that was the final blow for the 87. He is out of this race.
Must have off had 4 there, so that's one less driver we have contending for this race. That puts Luke LaFaro, the first guy, on 4 fresh tires. So given the instance that he has a little bit of damage right now and the speed we've seen out of the drivers that we have tonight, unless Brady Floyd's able to just find some speed in this run, I don't believe we'll have anybody catch up to that number 10 by the end of this race. You see Luke LaFaro making the pass there. A little bit of right front crinkle, but I'm not sure if he'll have enough time. As we actually see a car slamming to the inside wall on the front straightaway and around. It's the 64, but he's on the apron, so no caution. Not yet anyways.
And he had a hard hit to the inside wall. I'm not sure whether he got tagged or whether he just had an incident all by himself, but we stay under green flag conditions, as doesn't seem as though it was a big threat to anything on track. He wrecked below the racing line, so technically he does fall under, and we stay green. See, the incident here does get the outside wall, had heavy contact with the inside barrier, and goes spinning under the apron. And now he goes down pit road, and what has been a horrific night for the 64, now with practically no chance to get back up to the lead lap. But now edging to our final 25 laps of this race. It's now 1.3 seconds between Eric Heater and the rest of the guys behind. Floyd now in a head-to-head battle with the driver on the fresh tires by 8 laps. Lucas Strayer still trying to pray for the second spot.
I was actually unaware of the fact that Lucas Strayer was on fresh tires, but if he is, then he's in a pretty good spot right now. If he can get past this 20, he'll have about 20 so laps if he's able to get by Brady Floyd soon here, try and catch up to the race leader. But as the more laps he's able to stay behind, he actually tags the wall there. The more laps he stays behind this 20, that gives himself less opportunity to catch up to that 10 car, because this 20 is really holding this 41 up. As you see the 41 sideways off turn number 4, he is not gaining any time. He's actually losing about 2/10 a lap staying behind him. But right there you see gets to the inside, starts to wash up the track a little bit, has to leave the space, but he does clear him off turn number 2. And here comes Luke LaFaro now to try and take over the 3rd spot.
LaFaro will dive to the bottom. He'll peek his nose in. Easy done for the 54 of LaFaro. Now going to try and prey on the 41 for the next spot. But as they continue to battle, they have lost about 2.5 seconds to your race leader, Eric Heater. So at some point, you have to start thinking, should we try to work together, stay single file, or practically is it every man for himself? It's going to be that case for the 54 to the inside for a second. He'll take it away to the bottom. So the damage to Toyota Camry still working numbers here.
Yeah, you don't really work with anybody at any racetrack unless it's Daytona or Talladega. You just can't, and on the top of that, you just lose too much time. It's very difficult to really say, let's work together at a track like Dover, because how are you really supposed to do that? I mean, I know you suggested staying single file, but sometimes the lead car is slower, and that'll hold up everybody, so you really make no ground, at least with this particular package. As you see, the 41 and the 20 will do battle behind this 54. But let's see what Luke LaFaro can do. I'm not sure what he'll be able to do given the fact that he's damaged, but Eric Heater has just found another level. He's pulled away out to 3 seconds ahead of this group, and we haven't seen him pull away like this earlier in the run. I mean, we see all Michael Rosero and Casey Drake typically stay within about a second of him, but Eric Heater late in this race is finding another gear, trying to put this one to bed with 21 laps to go.
And that's the thing. He had the challenge of Rosero and Casey Drake to catch up to him, but now they're both out of this race, so there's no more competition, at least that we've seen so far tonight. There still could be the chance that LaFaro or anyone else behind still puts up a good fight to the 10 of Eric Heater. But as for right now, what we've seen in the trends of this race, the only drivers to really put that pressure has been Michael Rosero in the 23 and the 87 of Casey Drake. But now that they're both out of this event, and now that they're pretty much done for the evening, it's practically all Eric Heater by himself, just aiming to hold on, and he's still pulling away now, almost about 4 seconds between himself and LaFaro. So it continues to grow, and it continues to get better. Only thing that'll shake things up will be a yellow flag, but the good news for Heater is that he has nailed every single restart from the race lead. So Eric Heater now holding on in the final laps of this event, if we stay green, as LaFaro tries to fend off Lucas Strayer.
And that's going to be the thing that it comes down to. If there is a late caution in the next 10 laps or so, then try to take the lead away from Eric Heater. But how? Given the fact that the amount of laps that they've run, they'll probably come down pit road, as well as when you think about the fact that they do have an extra tire set remaining. But what if Eric Heater's the only one that does come down pit road? What if everybody decides, hey, we're going to do the opposite of what you do. If you come down pit road, we're all going to stay out, and if you stay out, we're all going to come down pit road and have tires stacked up against you. Because we've seen all night with Casey Drake and other drivers who have tried to deploy a different strategy of tires, and they get mired in traffic, and it really takes them time before they're able to make up spots to where they were before the caution. And if you only have a handful of laps to go, then the best strategy is get him out of the lead by just staying out and let him be the lone driver to come down pit road. But I'm also sure that the 10 is aware of this, and that'll factor his decision if we do get a late caution.
It'll all be about track position, so we probably talk about strategy. There's no more really left to mention about it, considering the fact that to the end of this race, in the final 15 laps, everybody will be good on fuel, so there's no worry about whether drivers can make it or whether things will be tight. It'll be practically confirmed to the end, and there's no worries about how much tank or how much in the tank they have. It's just about whether they can keep their car straight, how consistent they can be, and how smooth they can carry the race car around the track. And that's really been the case for Eric Heater. Mentioned it earlier tonight, Francisco, just how smooth he is on the inputs, how pretty much precise he's been since the drop of the green flag, and this is really paying off at a track like Dover. And I think that's one of the things about this racetrack that is very different from some of the others. If you nail a track like Dover, if you really get things right, if you're able to be precise, it is very rewarding, because if you're able to do it correctly and if you're able to handle it the best way possible, the track will kind of give you a thumbs up, and you'll be able to be very quick around the racetrack compared to everybody else. And that's the magic of what places like Dover and a lot of other challenging tracks can do. I can think of Darlington, another track that if you get it right, it does so much for you because of how tough that track is to really drive. And Dover, I think, falls exactly into that same category. And right now, it's a clear, easy W for Eric Heater in terms of the precise category.
Yeah, if you look there on that blimp view, you can just see nobody's around him, nobody ahead of him, nobody behind him. He has 5.5 seconds back to the next driver for position. And if you go back to him, you just see in front of him, there's nobody in front of him. No lap traffic, not in the immediate vicinity. of our race leader. So he's really in the best position possible for late in this race. But having a big lead, you do get worried if there's a caution. If you're in a battle with somebody, at least you're focused on the battle. But at this point in the race, I know that that 10 car, the driver behind that 10 car, must be thinking about the potential of a late caution, given the fact that he has such a huge lead at this point in the race. And I mean, he's been able to nail the restarts many times tonight, but he just doesn't want to do it one more time, given the amount of laps that'll be left in the race. There's always pressure on that last one. So I know that he wants to just be able to cruise to this win. Makes it a lot easier for himself as he has a 6-second lead after all. So if they have to bunch up once again, I know he's not going to be looking forward to that too much.
Yeah, that goes to show when you're in this long run, and I think we did mention it at Texas. That's where we talked about it, just because we had long green flag runs, just logging in the laps. That's what Eric Heater wants to do, and for a lot of drivers, a lot of it is fairly boring to log in laps all by yourself, but considering the position that Eric Heater is in, with the timing of this race, with the handful of laps that are left, he just wants to be able to log these laps. Whether it's boring or not, whether it's monotonous, considering that there's no one around him, he wants this to happen. This is the route to a third checkered flag in this season, and that would even mean more momentum to him going into the playoffs. And we already know Eric Heater is going to be one of those drivers, but to know how much momentum he's going to have, especially if he's able to walk away with this win, it will be a major difference to just having two. Every single win means so much. Every single win carries into that factor, and for Eric Heater, this could be a very good direction moving into the playoffs when we conclude the regular season at Pocono next week. Handful of laps to go here for Eric Heater in the final 6 laps of this race.
And 7 laps to go here from the Dover International Speedway, and we'll see how quick that just goes. But a solid performance from that 10 car all day long. I mean, he started on pole, had one miscue, and that came in the initial start of the race, but he was quickly able to make up for it. Never lost sight of the lead, was running second behind Rosero for all those laps, and pounced as soon as Rosero made a mistake, and he has not given up the lead since. So Eric Heater's been on his toes all day and has really done a fantastic job. He has just over an 8-second lead. There's Luke Lafaro just crossing the line now. I'm pretty sure Eric Heater's halfway down the back straightaway at this point. So he really has put a really big gap between himself and the driver behind. So he has not let up either. He's really trying to get to the white flag to ensure that there is no late caution that can put a fork in his plans.
Well, he is almost home. 5 laps to go from the Monster Mile. It's been all Eric Heater since the last restart, and he has put 8 seconds, or almost 9 seconds, between himself and second place driver winner last week at Texas, Luke Lafaro, and now he is under fire, potentially from Tyler Tomasi and Lucas Strayer. Tomasi did get by Lucas Strayer for third, so that 76 Toyota Camry has been fairly well over this semi-long run. Eric Heater, though, still back into the banking off of turn 2, and he will grab 3 laps to go from the Monster Mile, this time by 3 more miles, and practically just needing to hold on. Everything clean for the driver of that 10.
He's been putting on a spectacular season to this point. You mentioned he's trying to chase his 3rd win of the season, and given the fact that we've run about 7 races, that is about half the wins of the season to this point. So 3 doesn't sound like a big number, but when you're talking about 3 out of 7, that is a pretty big percentage of the amount of races that you've won. So it's been a really good season to this point for the driver of that 10, and he looks to continue it with 1 race to go after today before we begin the playoffs. And I know that that's what he's really looking forward to, the playoffs, to try and contend for a championship and try and build momentum to win a championship.
And that's going to be all it's about, the championship and running for that title. Eric Heater now into 3 and 4 for the penultimate time. He will take the white flag 1 more mile around this Monster Mile. He takes the start-finish line at what has been a remarkable season ever since for Eric Heater. Since the drop of the green flag at Michigan, you see the birds flying over. I guess they're starting to celebrate a little bit in their small group. Eric Heater now to the back straightaway into 3 and 4. He'll get around maybe the lap car of Josh Redden. But for the final time, off the final corner, Eric Heater gets a trifecta 3rd win in the CRL Cup Series. Comes here at Dover.
Great job all day by him. We never really saw a mistake outside of the start of the race, and he quickly made up for it. So a great job by him. Good performance out of him at a very difficult racetrack. Dover's no place that you can that is a joke. It'll reach out at any moment in time. So he was stayed on his toes all day, and we saw what he was able to do. So fantastic effort by that driver. We saw actually Tomasi was able to get past Luke Lafaro on the final lap to take home second place. So a good recovery by that 76. And Luke Lafaro able to come back from a win last week with another top 3 here today. So good back-to-back weeks for the 54. And once again, fantastic win by the driver, the 10.
So Eric Heater will go back to the front straightaway and celebrate. And there he is, burning it down in front of the virtual fans on the banking, right to the start-finish line. There was a handful of drivers there to celebrate. There's Tyler Tomasi giving his celebratory statements. Just giving the wave over there, the virtual wave to the 10. He'll burn it down and go a Polish victory lap. At least try to drift it around the racetrack here and try to have a little bit of fun on the banking. His 3rd win of the season. First one came at Michigan. Second came the race after at the Charlotte Roval. And now he masters the 3rd discipline here in the CRL Cup Series. A win at a short track with just only 1 race left next week until we get to the CRL Cup Series playoffs. There was a battle, though, for 2nd and 5th. And you mentioned there, Francisco, Tyler Tomasi takes over that 2nd spot. So phenomenal job for the 76 to make that comeback. Bryn George, who was in a battle with the 57 and Matthew Oliveira, they also settled themselves out. Bryn George will end up within this top 5. But with that, we'll settle into our full field results, see exactly where everybody finished, and you can see exactly how it settled within the top 5. Eric Heater, 3rd win of the season, comes here tonight. Tyler Tomasi, fantastic run to the end. His Toyota Camry will finish behind 11 seconds, though, in the 2nd spot. Luke Lafaro, a damaged Camry, but nonetheless still relatively fast to hold on to 3rd after his win last week. Lucas Strayer, a better night here at Dover, finishing within the top 4, and Bryn George gets over Matthew Oliveira for the 5th spot. Oliveira will settle for the 6th spot. Brady Floyd, early strong, but finishes in 7th. Luke Peters will be 1 lap down in 8th. Josh Redden, the 28 machine, will finish also 1 lap down in the 9th spot. And Brett Murphy, with an incident earlier that did not cause the yellow flag, he rounds out this top 10.
The rest of the field was the 87 of Casey Drake, who was a strong contender early on, but had a miscue in the final run of the race in Altef Ford. He'll finish in 11th, 31 laps down. Michael Rosero, also one of the fellow challengers for Eric Heater, who led laps early on in the race, will finish 37 down. Quinn Gingrich will finish 55 down in the 13th position, and Marshall Harris rounds out the field, as I don't believe he took the green flag here tonight.
Well, that's your entire full field rundown from the CRL Cup Series here at the Dover International Speedway. But we'll head to Victory Lane and we will talk with our race winner, Eric Heater, for the 3rd time this season. We'll bring him in from the Monster Mile. And Eric, this may feel good and probably one of the smoothest drivers on the racetrack, and it surely paid off for you. Some challenges with Michael Rosero, but you nailed the restarts, you maintained your control, and you were able to walk away with this victory. How was that for you, knowing the way that you handled this racetrack?
Yeah, I mean, I went into this track knowing this is, I wouldn't say my best track, but it's one of my better ones. I feel like I know the track pretty decently, so it was just, I knew on the initial start there, the outside was going to be the lane you wanted to be in, and it was just the inside, no grip really. So I got, shuffled back to 3rd. I was able to get by Luke. He let me go. And then it was just so much dirty air, kind of hard to catch up to the guy. And then once we were on really old tires, it was just once I got like right on his bumper, it was just loose until he made the mistakes there and I was able to get by. And then it was just managing the cautions and the new tires and all that. I just... For the last caution there, I felt like going on new tires was going to be the wrong decision, because going through the field, you're just going to have to burn up your stuff getting by all those guys. So I figured, staking it out on the track and just biting on those guys, either making mistakes or not being able to get up front so easily with the juice going and all that would be the better decision, and paid off. So.
It was,
go
ahead.
It was a pretty decent race, I'd say.
Well, this one comes your 3rd of the season, and I think we've already established that you're going to be one of those drivers to fight for a CRL title in just a couple of weeks, at least when we get to Pocono and conclude the regular season and when we drop the green flag at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. But Now that you've pretty much put yourself in that conversation and you've already got this third win, I know there's a lot of momentum probably going for you. What's going to be that mindset heading into the playoffs, and how you guys are going to handle that stretch to capture a title here in this season?
I mean, just have to make no mistakes on pit road. That's been my bane really for this league and other leagues. Just making mistakes on the pit stops takes me completely out of it. So just have to, whether I have the speed or not, have races like this where I make no mistakes, or if there's, just get lucky with no pit stops, or, just have that completely out of the window. Because, I mean, just if we have clean races like this, even if it's not, at the same speed, we should have a pretty good shot at the championship.
Well, you walk in there with 3 race wins, maybe even 4 if you're able to get that over at Pocono next week. But before we let you go, Eric, to celebrate your win here at Dover, is there anyone you'd just like to give the shout outs and love to? Any sponsors, any teams, or anyone else you'd just like to shout out here tonight?
Yeah, for sure. All my Shadow Racing teammates, and all the admins who put the league on, of course, and you for broadcasting.
We certainly appreciate it, Eric. Congratulations on your win here from Dover. We look forward to seeing you from the Tricky Triangle next week. But 3 race wins and 3 checkered flags to your name. Congratulations here from the Monster Mile.
Thank you.
That is Eric Heater, your winner here tonight by a healthy margin over Tyler Tomasi. But speaking of Tyler Tomasi, we'll talk with him, the driver who finished second at the start-finish line and was able to get over the 54 of Luke Lafaro for that second spot. 76 of Tyler Tomasi is trackside with our Francisco Baquea.
Hey, Tyler, we didn't see much of you there tonight, but you showed up at the end of the race when it mattered most, and you made a last lap pass for second place. Take us through your race and sort of describe to us what it was like driving out there on such a difficult racetrack.
Well, long runs were where I was at. Short runs I sucked, but long runs I would pass everyone because they would use up their stuff. Didn't run any practice. Started in the back, and every time the choose cone rule would happen after the yellow, we would go from supposed to restarting third to pretty much restarting like eighth. And at the end of the race, we pretty much on any long run, I felt like I was probably one of the fastest cars. You just passing people left and right. We had another yellow. I mean, then we probably would have paid for tires, so it wouldn't have mattered. So I don't know.
What was it like racing against these drivers? I mean, we saw in the last run, Eric Heater really stretched it out to just over 11 seconds, I believe, at the end of the race. And when Rosero and Casey Drake were still around, they were the ones contending. So how difficult was it to keep up with them in the early portions of this race?
On short runs, they not talking about Heater. Heater was fast the whole time, no matter what. Everybody else, they were fast on the short runs, and then they would start getting really tight. It looked like on the long runs, and then you would be passing them, but then the yellow would come out, and then it was just the same game over and over again.
So before we let you go here, Tyler, I know you got some people to thank, sponsors, team members. So I'll just give you the floor here, and you can mention anybody you want.
Tomasi Law Associates, RLS Performance, Caddick Tile Company, and that's it.
Thanks for taking the time with us, Tyler. Congratulations on your second place finish, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the Pocono Raceway next week.
Yep.
Um, up to this point, it's been a pretty good race to me. I thought that I could easily get top 5. Obviously, beating Heater is going to be a tough task. And then, obviously, getting the damage with Michael there definitely hurt my chances, so I had to kind of pit just to see the damage, and obviously took tires there because why not? And my chances pretty much after that were done of winning the race because I had to work through the field, which also burned my tires up. And that's what eventually led to Tomasi getting by me because I just had my tires were just so burned from getting around everybody. So third's not too bad.
And certainly when we talk about tire wear and using the equipment, that's one of the things that comes at a big factor here at a place like Dover and just how tough it is. You do have that experience from the short track race at Bristol where you almost got the win there, but how different is a track like Dover compared to a lot of the other ones you visited this season, and just how tough it is to race in these low downforce Cup Series machines?
Oh yeah, Dover's a complete. I mean, it's such a unique track. I mean, tire saving is big here, and just the way the track just drives is very different from most tracks.
Well, it certainly was a challenge, but you took up to it, and you handled third place now going into the final race of the regular season. Before we let you go, though, Luke, is there anybody you'd just like to thank? Any teams, sponsors, or anybody else that makes it happen for you here in this league?
I would like to thank my parents for letting me race, and all my teammates at Shadow and Supermax Racing, and you guys for putting the broadcast up.
Well, Luke, we certainly appreciate the time, and of course, we look forward to seeing you at the Tricky Triangle next week in the old configuration. That's also going to be a lot of fun in these cars to cap off the regular season, and hopefully seeing you in the playoffs. Congratulations here from Dover and your second place finish, or your third place finish. We look forward to seeing you there.
All right, thank you.
That is Luke Lafaro, last step of the podium in the 54 DC Solar Toyota Camry. He will finish there, and he will cap off the driver interview section here for tonight, the Dover International Speedway, for the 6th race of the CRL Cup Series. We'll bring it back to the booth, and Francisco, our second short track race of the season surely didn't disappoint. I think Bristol brought a lot more of the chaos, but Dover brought a lot more of the precision, whether it came down to just nailing the exits of the corners, nailing the tire saving, whatever it was all based on execution. And Eric Heater, again, a fantastic way to do just all of that to take his third race win of the season.
Yeah, Dover is probably one of the most drivers racetracks, and Dover is definitely one of the ones that is really up there. You mentioned it with the likes of Bristol, Darlington. Tracks like those are driver racetracks. That means that the driver really makes a good portion of the success of the team and the car, because at other racetracks, usually you can say it's more of a car thing, but at these racetracks, it does come down to the driver, and we saw Eric Heater today was the best driver out there, able to tame the racetrack, never really had any issues aside from the start of the race. And again, he made up for that rather quickly. So Eric Heater was on his toes all day. And I mean, we saw it. He led like about 90 laps of the race. So, I mean, you can't get much better than that to cap it off with an 11.5-second win. I mean, it really was as good as you can perform from Eric Heater. So he has a lot of momentum on his side, 3 race wins in about 7 races. So he is going to have a lot of momentum going into the final race of the regular season next week at the Legacy Pocono Raceway. And I hope to be out there on the racetrack. And if I'm not, I'll be in here in the booth with you.
Well, we've got a lot of exciting action coming up on the KBueno Racing Network for the rest of next week. And this is our final race here on the KBueno Racing Network for this week. But next week, we kick things off back on Thursday night with the Oscar Truck Series as they tackle the next race of their season, and that will conclude, or at least will begin at 8:55 p.m. Eastern right here on the KBueno Racing Network, and I'll have myself and Mike Goodman along for the call there as they continue their Truck Series season and they trot to their playoffs. And then we're back at it again here on Friday night, 7:25 p.m. Eastern, from the Legacy Pocono Raceway in the Tricky Triangle. We'll have our coverage from then. Of course, you can catch the races obviously right here on the KBueno Racing Network YouTube channel. So apart from that, that concludes our broadcast of the CRL Cup Series from the Dover International Speedway and the Monster Mile. I want to give a big thanks to everybody at the administration team for putting these shows each and every week and for allowing everything to happen here in this series. Brady Floyd, Bryn George, Zachary Thorne, all the members of the administration and council that make things happen. And for all of us at the KBueno Racing Network, for Charlie Baier and my colleague in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, my name is Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from the Monster Mile. We look forward to seeing you from the long Pocono Raceway as we conclude our regular season.